Hi everyone, welcome back to Tales of Dread. I can't wait to tell you about a scary story I heard at the fair. Keep watching. If you like, you won't want to miss the story tonight. True and creepypasta scary stories, make sure to subscribe, click that bell, and smash that thumbs up. Let's talk about how scary it was the day my friends and I went looking for the cattle wonga. I laid down in a cotton field, spun dandelions, and got burned by the sun. It was one of those hot summer days when the sun never sets and the shadows are all golden. It just goes on and on like a smear of paint. The sky was as clear blue as a hydrangea flower, and there were no clouds. Elliot would get excited and jump up when he thought he saw a cloud, but it was always a plane, a trick of the light, or a stray dandelion flying through the air. When Elliot tried to jump up again, Chris grabbed his ankle and pushed him back down onto the grass. There are no clouds, damn it. Language. Elliot seemed a little upset. Chris laughed. He was a true football player, with big shoulders and a big temper to match. So I quickly got up to avoid a fight. I'm bored, so let's go do something, like play catch. Chris began to agree, but he stopped himself. I was very scared when a dangerous light came into his eyes. Chris says that just about everyone else thought his ideas were great. They lost their minds. We would hang him from a tree branch when he closed the school to see if the squirrels would eat him. Peter had been hanging there for almost 6 hours like an overweight flag. Have you heard of the wonga cattle? As he said this, he looked right at Elliot. I heard that it hangs out in old fairgrounds and eats bad kids who get lost. It has snake-like eyes and wraps the bones of its victims in its fur. Little Will's cousin saw it and says it has claws that look like Chris fumbles for the right word, knives. I suggested yes, knives. There's nothing like that. Most likely, it's just an animal. Elliot didn't sound like he was very confident. I knew about Wonga's cattle, of course. In my town, everyone did. There were many stories, and some of them contradicted each other. Some said that a big dragon kept the skulls of children and only brought them out on rainy nights to look at them in the moonlight. The cattle wonga was a big man beast whose family had left him. He was angry and afraid of the world, but he always lived in the empty fairground and was always very, very hungry. In the heyday of my town, the famous Grenadine Circus drew people from all over the world. It was fun for the whole family and open all year, but that was a long time ago. What I knew about the circus came from old people who sat around creaky folding tables and told me stories about when they were young. Everyone knew that at least half of the stories were made up, and maybe the other half as well. But the circus had always interested me. Or, I was more interested in how all the adults dealt with it. Parents of all the kids did not think of the cattle wonga as a story that was safe for kids to tell around the campfire when they were warm and safe. I knew that wonga was a real cow, and that I should stay away from the circus at all costs. Wonga is not a real cow. Elliot said it again, this time with more force. Everyone probably got scared when they saw a cougar, tiger, or someone with a lot of hair. We don't have any of those here. I was unsure. Well, we do have hairy people, but I've never seen a predator bigger than your ugly baby sister. The last thing said was about Chris, so everyone should just be quiet. I'm going to the fairgrounds, and if you don't want to go, don't come or you'll be called a chicken. Elliot and I went after Chris as he walked away with confidence. The people who lived there in their 20s gave my town a name. People who were too old to be happy with small lives but too young to understand that big lives were for big kids born in big cities, far from people who believed in the cattle wonga. Someone in their 20s is calling. Because it was so small, my town was called Satan's Soul. We made it to the fair with our friends. In less than 10 minutes, vines grew up the poles that held the sign, which proudly said Grenadine Circus. It was hard to tell what it was. It had things made of wood that looked like they used to be stalls, and the ground was covered with leaves that crunched when you walked on them. And lots of anthills. Chris hit his big hands together. Let's go find some Wonga meat cattle. Elliot gave a roll of the eyes. We walked into the circus together because Chris didn't seem very eager to go first when we got there. Elliot ran his fingers along a row of cages that were underwater. I'm not sure where all the animals went when the circus closed. I heard a loud crash to the side. Elliot. I looked over and saw Chris moaning at the bottom of a ladder leading down into a half-open basement. I slid down the ladder quickly and grabbed a Chris. Dude, you good? He started crying so hard that he was gasping for air, which turned into hysterical laughter. You should have looked in the mirror. Chris got up and brushed himself off, happy with what he had done. I signed the contract and got up to leave, but growls from the back of the room stopped me. Almost certainly, it's the wind. I tried to sound sure, but the sound of my nails on the stone made it hard to tell. All done. I'm out. Chris climbed the ladder backwards. Chicken. Elliot yelled back at him. Wonga is not a real cow. The rumblings got louder. Wonga is not a real cow. Elliot had a pale face, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm not an egg. I tried to get Elliot to move, but he didn't budge. Wonga is not a real cow. Elliot screamed it into the back of the room as if he wanted the dark shape moving in the back of the room to disappear. The cow Wonga isn't real, and there aren't any predators here. You can't be real, either. He shouted the words as if something small but important was about to break, and that was the last thing he ever said. I gave the shape a quick look. It was just a bunch of shadows in the corner. I grabbed Elliot's arm and decided I didn't want to see it move. I talked to him in a calm way, making him feel what I didn't feel. Come on, let's just go. Elliot, don't worry. We have to just leave. Now, I heard grunts coming from behind me. Elliot, move. Elliot's face went pale. He used one shaking finger to point over my shoulder. The bear was kind of sad. It tried to get to us, but when it got halfway there, it hit its nose on the ground and whimpered like a child. The bear's fur was falling out in patches, its eyes were covered in a milky white film, and it sniffed the air, trying to find us. All those years of being crammed onto bicycles and paraded around like an oversized dog, followed by years of being alone in the fairgrounds, had taken their toll on the animal. Even so, it was very big, and it was clear that it was hungry. I was stupid and said, "But we don't have bears here," Elliot said in a whisper. "I told you." I asked what had happened to the animals in the circus. "We get it." I was right. I grabbed Elliot's arm and pulled us both out of the basement. As we scrambled up the ladder, I turned around and looked back. The last thing I saw was the bear's neck, which had a faded red collar around it. Elliot and I met Chris at the edge of the grounds and told him about the bear. It was the last thing left of the Grenadine Circus. The cattle Wonga must not be real. Just a bunch of stupid kids making stuff up about a bear. Even though he had run away from the bear, he sounded sad. It was like he had bees in his pants. I would say so. I felt better. There was a rustling in the trees. The wind stopped blowing all of a sudden, and I could just barely hear what sounded like long, long claws, scraping across the concrete. The noise kept getting louder. Built until my chest could feel the vibrations. Inside the gate, there was a big, round figure with limbs sticking out at what seemed like random angles. One of the limbs was holding a piece of meat that was still wearing a red collar. Even though it didn't have a face, the way it sat there made it look very proud. That time, Chris wasn't the only one who ran away. The Catawonga was never seen again. But as soon as I turned 18, I left without a plan and without any money. Chris stayed, though. He has always been this stubborn. When Chris turned 20, just inside the gate to the fairgrounds, Chris was found without his head. Well, I hope you all liked the scary story we read tonight. If you did, click that button to subscribe, give me a big thumbs up and click that bell, so that you don't miss any videos. And like always, spread me like butter. Yeah. Have a good night and don't do anything scary.